Hi, welcome to this demo of using IBM I to either copy or backup via BRMS data to Spectrum Protect via our S3 object agent. In this demo, I'm going to be showing you how to set up Spectrum Protect's object agent and define an object client for the IBM I, and how to set up a container bucket specific for the backups and copies. Then I'll switch over to IBM I and we will run some copies and the reverse of a copy of bringing data back. And then we'll run a couple backups on BRMS and a restore from BRMS. And finally, we'll go back into Spectrum Protect and look at what the bucket looks like with that IBM I data in it and how expiration works with BRMS and Spectrum Protect, as well as how dedupe, compression, and encryption work. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do with this Spectrum Protect version 8.1.12 or above server is to register an object agent if you've not already done so. The object agent will translate S3 commands into commands that the Spectrum Protect server understands. So we'll log on to the command line with DSM ADMC and we'll issue a define server object agent HLA equals, and this is going to be either the fully qualified name or the public IP address for the Spectrum Protect Plus server. The object agent's default LLA is 9000, but we need to use 443. And this is going to be the port that we connect with. And we have to use 443 because that is the port that IBM I utilizes by default for HTTPS connections. And then object agent equals yes and com equals TCP/IP. Okay, so that defined the object agent, and you're now given a command that you need to run in order to start a service for the object agent. Because this is a Linux machine and Linux and AIX reserve the lower level ports for root users, we cannot just run this command as the instance owner. Instead, we need to be logged on as the root user. And then we'll do a no-hup of this optatively TSM server bin SP object agent gateway protect the address once again, which was 91160.85:1500, which is the default address for the Spectrum Protect server we're utilizing. And then -- address space :443, and that was the object agent port. And then the -- protect -config /home/tsminst/object agent, and then the object agent config file. Now this directory was created when we defined the object agent server inside of Spectrum Protect, and it's going to contain a lot of important files, including the self-signed trusted certificate that we'll need to import onto the IBM I later. Okay, and then we will do a ps-ef and grep to make sure the SP object agent is running. You'll see it running out there, and you'll see the correct IP address as well as the correct port of 443 showing up. Now that our object agent is defined, and remember you have one object agent per Spectrum Protect server, so if you already had an object agent out there, you will have to update it to use the 443 port. So we're assuming that you've already defined a container storage pool, and this can either be a directory container or a cloud, both on-premise and off-premise container storage pool. And the next thing you're going to need to do is make sure you have your domain set up. So as a DSM administrator, we're going to utilize this dir pool directory container storage pool, and we're going to define a domain with that. So we're going to do define object domain, and we'll call it my object domain, and then standard pool equals dir pool. And now we're going to register a object agent node. So we're going to do register node. We're going to call that node IBM type equals object client and domain equals my object domain. That was the one we just created. Now, once you define that, you do need to save off the access key ID and the secret access key. IBM I is going to need both of those IDs and secret access keys, and we're going to need that when we create a bucket. So now if we run a query server, you will see we are serving on port 443. Once again, the default was 9000, but we're using 443 because the IBM I assumes we're using that for HTTPS. So the next thing we need to do is create a bucket, because IBM I does not automatically create buckets, and inside of Spectrum Protect, we map the bucket to the file space for that particular node. Now, some S3 applications will do bucket creation, but we're going to manually do that with the S3 browser application, which is freeware. And this S3 browser application has a simple GUI interface. So if we open up that S3 browser application and we go to Accounts, Manage Accounts, and then we're going to click on plus Add in order to add in a new account. Enter an account name. This can be whatever you want. The account type should be S3 compatible storage. And then you need to give it a REST endpoint. That will be the Spectrum Protect server address 91160.85. the port, which we set as 443. For the signature, you need to choose the signature v4. Then you're going to copy in the access key ID and the secret access key that were produced by the Spectrum Protect server when we defined the object client. And go ahead and click Add New Account. And then go ahead and click Save Changes. Okay, and at this point you will be connected to the Spectrum Protect server through the object agent, and we can go ahead and create a bucket. So click on New Bucket. We're going to call it Test Bucket, and we don't need a region, so you can skip that. And then go ahead and create New Bucket. Now if you go back to the Spectrum Protect server and do a query file space, you'll now see the bucket, and that's going to be mapped specifically to the file space for this client. The first thing we need to do on the IBM I side is import the trusted self-signed certificate that was created when we did the define server object agent. And that would be the object cert.crt certificate that you'll find in the object agent directory on the Spectrum Protect server. So we're going to go ahead and FTP that over to the IBM I system. Then you're going to log on to the IBM Digital Certificate Manager for I, also called the DCM. Click on Upload Certificates, choose Browse, and in our case, we go to Downloads, and you'll see the agent cert.cert file. Go ahead and select that, and then click Upload. And you will now see the upload is successful, and the agent cert.cert shows up below. You're going to click on Open Certificate Store, then click System, then go ahead and put in your password. You'll want to close that filter out that says Server and Client Certificates. And now you'll want to click on Import, and then Certificate Authority, CA. And you'll want to do Browse Upload, and there you'll see the agent cert that we just FTP'd over. Go ahead and click Select. Click Continue. You can go ahead and give it a label. We're going to call it Protect Demo, and click Import. And now you should be able to see that in the list of certificates. You'll see the Protect Demo certificate listed right there. So at this point, we can switch over to the IBM I main menu. The next thing we'll need to do is make sure that the ICC has loaded the product S733ICC, which is your IBM Cloud Storage Solution for I. So if you issue a DSP SFW RSC, you'll see that product out there. And once you've installed the 5733 ICC, then we're going to go ahead and issue a WRKOBJ space Q ICC, star all for your object name, the Q ICC for your library, and object type of star command. This will show all of the commands that are available for ICC. Now the ones we'll be using are going to be the CRT S3R ICC, which will create an S3 resource. And then to copy a resource that's already been sent to Spectrum Protect and bring it back to IBM I, you use the cpyfrmcld. And to copy a resource from IBM I out to Spectrum Protect via S3, you'll use the cpyfrmcld. to, so tocld command. Next, we need to create an S3 resource, so we'll issue crt s3 ricc. For the resource name, you can call it whatever you like. We'll call it demo sp. For the description, we'll put in demo for IBMI to Spectrum. For the access key ID, this is the access key ID that was generated when we created the object client on the Spectrum Protect server. So you'll enter that object key ID as well as the secret access key that was also generated when we created the object client. Now, use compression and use encryption, you'll leave as no. If you do want compression and encryption turned on, you can turn those on the Spectrum Protect container storage pool side. For bucket, you need to enter the bucket name we created, and we called that test bucket, and this is case sensitive. And then finally, you'll pull in the resource URL, and this was the Spectrum Protect Plus server IP address with the port of 443. And then you should see the message that the demo SP resource was created successfully. If you issue WRK CFG ICC, you'll see our demo SP resource, which shows up as type AWS S3. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and copy over a file from the IBM I via S3 to the Spectrum Protect container storage pool. And what we're copying over is the IFS files, also known as your PC files. This will not work for the database files on IBM I. So we issue cpytocld. We're going to be prompted for the resource name, which is demo sp. We want to set batch to yes. And then we want to enter the file name that we want to copy. So for local file name, we've created a couple demo files. So that'll be /protect demo /demo2. And this time for the cloud file name, we'll also call it demo2. So we've submitted that copy to batch. If you issue a WRK SBM, you'll see the job running. And if you issue a WRK STS ICC and do that for the active jobs, you'll see that this copy is active and about 2 to 3% has been completed. If we copy over another file, in this case we'll do demo1 file using the cpy2cld command again. And then if we reissue that WRK STS ICC, you'll now see 2 active jobs. And because that demo1 file was smaller, you'll see it's already 20% complete. Okay, and if we issue another WRK STS ICC, splat all, and you'll see all of the jobs that are out there, including the jobs that have failed or are successful or that are still active. The reverse of this command is the cpyfrmcld, and this will copy a file from the Spectrum Protect container back to the IBM I. You need to enter the resource name, which is demo sp. For the submit to batch, say yes. For cloud file name, enter the name you want to copy back, in this case demo1. And then enter the local file name that you want it saved as, and we'll call that protect demo /demo5. So we'll give it a new name. WKSTSICC with the status of *all will show us the active copies from Spectrum Protect back to the IBM I. And then once that's completed, if you do a WRK LNK space /protect demo and then choose option 5, that'll show you all of the files that are out there in that protect demo directory, including the demo 5 that we just copied back across. We can run another copy from cloud command, this time calling the file demo6, and so now you'll see all 6 of our files out there. If you need to edit the S3 resource, you can issue a WRK CFG ICC and then select option number 2. And then you could update things like the keys, the bucket name, and so forth. Issuing a CHG S3 RICC and entering the demo SP as the resource name will also get you to the same update for those resources if you needed it. Okay, so now switching gears and looking at how BRMS is able to send its backup to Spectrum Protect containers via S3. You will still need to create an ICC resource, just like we did for the copy. And then you need to issue a inzbrm space splat data. And this is going to be setting up objects in BRMS so that you can back up to ICC. And it will basically be creating 4 control groups, all that start with QCLDB. And 2 of these control groups, the GRP and the IPL, will be used for the full backups. And then the SYS and the USR will be used for incremental backups. Now we need to create a control group using turnkey capability, so it'll create volume. So enter option 1 for the control group, enter QCLDBSP, and then for the SEQ, enter 1, and for the backup items, we're going to enter MERV star. Okay, so this is creating the QLDBSP control group, and you'll see the message that that was created. If we go ahead and edit that, then we can change the full backup to demo SP, the incremental backup to demo SP, the backup devices to star MED CLS. For the sign off interactive users, we'll set that to no. And for automatically back up media references, we'll also set that to no. If you issue a WRKLIB space MERV star, you'll be able to see the libraries and objects that are part of MERV star. The BRMS admin will then kick off a fuller incremental backup with strbkubrm space QCLDBSP, and this will submit a backup job which will create some virtual tapes, and then eventually it'll transfer the files to Spectrum Protect's container storage pool via S3. If you issue a WRK-ST-SICC, you will see that the transfer is in progress. And if you issue a WRK-MED IBRM, you'll be able to see all the libraries that are saved and to which volumes they're saved to. Note the volume number Q25236 because we're going to see that in the bucket here in a bit. Okay, let's go ahead and back this up again. You can see now there's a new volume. This time the volume is Q21003 for this backup. And if you issue a 6 against that, you'll see that this tape is currently in transfer status. And once it's been completely transferred to the Spectrum Protect container storage pool via S3, you'll see the volume turns from transfer to active state. Okay, let's switch gears now and do a restore. In order to do a restore, you're going to issue a 7 against the library, and this will transfer the entire image back from Spectrum Protect to IBM via S3. And what's actually happening underneath the covers is the cloud is doing a copy functionality. We can see that going on here. And then it's restoring the individual library from that entire image. So I've showed you how to do a copy from IBM over to Spectrum Protect, and I've also showed you how to use BRMS to send a backup to Spectrum Protect. So we're using this S3 browser application to peer into the bucket inside of Spectrum Protect. And first you'll see that demo 1 and demo 2 file that we sent over using the copy functionality. And then you'll see this QBMRS directory, and if you drill down into it, you'll see the 2 standard label tape images that BMRS backed up to Spectrum Protect. That was the Q25236 and the Q21003. BMRS maintenance will coordinate with Spectrum Protect when one of the tape expires so that we delete the backup out from the bucket and we update the Spectrum Protect metadata information. And I'll show you that here in a minute. Okay, let's switch over to the Spectrum Protect Administrator command line and take a look at how this looks in Spectrum Protect. If you issue a query occupancy, you'll see the file space name, which correlates to the bucket, in this case test bucket. And then you'll see the number of files. And the number of files is not a direct correlation because Spectrum Protect uses the S3 multi-part upload. So you might have multiple parts to a file. Usually these parts are broken into 5 megabyte pieces. So right now we have 216 files, so to say, showing up. So if on BRMS, I run maintenance and have a tape volume expire off, you'll see that that volume is deleted from the bucket. So if I refresh that bucket, underneath the covers, you see now I just have one volume showing up. If I go back into Spectrum Protect and issue another query occupancy, you'll see that the occupancy still shows this 216 multi-part file uploads. So if I kick off the expire inventory, and remember expiration usually runs as a daily process, but I can manually kick it off with expire inventory. And as soon as that process is done, if I reissue the query occupancy, you'll see that the reference to that deleted BMRS volume has also been deleted from the Spectrum Protect metadata catalog. And in this case, we now only have 208 files. Another thing that happens in the Spectrum Protect container is that we always dedupe the files and then we can optionally compress and encrypt them. So if you issue a generate dedupe stats, and once that's completed, if you do a query dedupe stats against the dir pool of IBM I, you will see information, for instance, about the amount of data that's been backed up to the IBM I pool, the compression ratios, the dedupe ratios, and so forth. So this is just a good informative command. So in conclusion, I've shown you how to set up Spectrum Protect and IBM I to be able to do copies and BRMS backups and restores from IBM I via S3 to the Spectrum Protect directory or cloud container storage pools. Thank you very much.